Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's so great to see all of you here. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope you all feel really welcome. Hope you're tucking into those, quite frankly, enormous sandwiches. And yeah, it's a bit of an intro. We've got a video to show you about Events Week and kind of what the whole vibe behind these events are. So yeah, let's go for it.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. True light, that gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.' Out of his fullness, we have all received grace in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known."
So yeah, throughout this week, we're running events at lunchtime, at dinner time, all around this theme of home, and just looking at what does it mean to belong. A lot of people are searching for belonging, someone to know them, and what does that mean in the modern day, and what can Christianity say to that in the modern day, and what does it mean to be children of God? And today, we're going to be looking at specifically, like, how is our search for happiness, is that making us maybe unhappy? Is that not getting us what we want? And in a second, I'm going to invite Daniel up to talk about that. First, if some practical things are, if you haven't been to this before, we're just going to have a short talk, then we're going to go for a time of discussion around your tables, and then some Q&A with Daniel and Matt. Toilets are out the back if you need them. Yeah, I just hope you can come with it with an open mind. If you have any questions, please feel free to stay around at the end, keep discussions going. Yeah, and with much further ado, let's invite Daniel up. Yeah, go on, let's give it. Can you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself? What do you do, and yeah, why are you speaking about this today?
Sure. I'm doing a PhD here at Cambridge. I'm trying to do a PhD here in Cambridge. I'm in my third year. I'm in the Faculty of History, exploring how the Jonian William Wilberforce, a member of Parliament from 200 years ago, used his words to make a beautiful difference in the world, specifically to help end the slave trade. I hope that my work is going to help anyone, all 5 people who read my PhD. I'm hoping it will help them see how we can use our words to make a difference in the world.
Thank you very much. Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna now just go straight to the talk. I hope it goes well.
Thanks so much, Adam. And thank you everyone for coming. Amidst the busyness of this week, showing up, I really appreciate it. Well, the summer leading into my family and I coming to Cambridge, so the summer of 2022, I decided to get healthy. Okay, I'm in my 30s. It's not the easiest endeavor, but I decided to get healthy by becoming a runner. So I ran Monday to Friday, as fast as I could, as far as I could, as frequently as I could, And I got to tell you, it wasn't very fast, it wasn't very far, and it was frequent, which was my rookie mistake. I did this for several weeks. It was pretty frustrating because I wasn't improving basically at all. And then I got a minor injury. So by the time I showed up in Cambridge, I wasn't that healthy. And I mean, I was one of the guys, the few Jonians who of the many students who filled the St. John's Library, I was one of the ones who actually studied at that college. And that's a joke. A lot of us got an email this week saying, do not bring your friends anymore, because there's very few Jonians, though the library is full. Anyway, that's a notice the senior tutor wanted me to give you. So, no, I just another guy who was just in the library all day, not very healthy, not very well. So a year later, my friend Cam Fensky, some of you know him, and everyone who does loves him. He's such a good guy, and he's an excellent runner. And so he convinced me to start running much less, slower than I could, shorter than I needed to, and like maximum 2 times a week, and insisted that I stretch every time. So if you had observed me a year ago in St. Catharines, Canada, and then you saw the next year where I was running less often, you would think perhaps that I had stopped pursuing being a runner or stopped pursuing being healthy as much, like I was pursuing it less. But in reality, I was pursuing it, one might say I was pursuing it even harder. I was pursuing it even more intentionally. I was definitely more informed. I learned that the days that I chose not to run were like part of my choosing to become a better runner. So it wasn't that my pursuit of running was making me unhealthy. It was that my faulty pursuit of running was making me unhealthy that first time, and that my much better, my informed pursuit of running was making me a better runner. And I say that because almost all of us, if not all of us, are pursuing happiness. Is the pursuit of happiness making us sad? That's a question that they asked me to speak on today. Is the pursuit of happiness making us sad? You might expect that as a religious person, that I'd be saying yes. Our pursuit of happiness is making us sad. Instead, we should pursue religion and stop pursuing happiness. But I'm going to say we are pursuing happiness, and we're pursuing it in different ways. And the fact that we often think so little about what happiness is or how to pursue it is actually depriving our lives. So whether you agree with me or not on who God is or if there is a God, I trust that I hope that this talk will be helpful to you. And there's going to be a bunch of very applicable things. And I look forward to receiving your questions at the end. So this is the shape of the talk. First, the problem of happiness. Second, the pillars of happiness, and third, the promise of happiness. So the problem, the pillars, and the promise. So one of the problems of trying to think about happiness is that it's very hard for us to figure out who is happy based on their circumstances. And this has implications for ourselves. It's hard to see who else is happy, and this is an issue for ourselves. So first, if I was to talk to you about an Olympian, I have a Canadian Olympian. I know a lot of you don't realize we're in the Olympics because we're always getting 4th place, but hey, we're there. So if I was to tell you about a friend of mine who was at the Olympics, she'd been training so hard for so long as she got there. If I was to tell you about my friend who was battling cancer, and if I was to tell you about someone who just had their 2nd child, a boy, and then I was to give you the exam to match their levels of happiness to their circumstance, to who they are. So I was to tell you one person is a 5 out of 10, one person is an 8 out of 10, one person is a -7 out of 10 happiness. I don't know that you can actually match them up. Like you can try, and the more of these there are, the harder it would be to match up. But I'll tell you, my friend who was in the Olympics, she'd been trying to get to the Olympics for so long. This was her dream come true, and she did well. But she actually said, honestly, that it was one of the most miserable few weeks of her life. It was all going well, and yet there was just this gnawing emptiness inside of her. My friend who was battling cancer, brutal time. And yet there was nevertheless, over time, a happiness that she was able to enter into. And then the one who had their 2nd child, that's me, that's my baby up on the screen. His name is Michael. He's a beautiful baby. His beauty is relevant to the talk for the most part. But I was looking for an excuse to talk about him. He's one of the happiest kids I know. And even amidst all the sleepless nights and all of that, I asked my wife, what would you rate me out of happiness? She said, I think you're an 8 out of 10. So hey, there we go. I'm an 8 out of 10 out of happiness, she says. So the problem with this, what's so insightful about this, not enough of us are thinking about this, the fact that so many of us are putting the weight and our pursuit of happiness on these kinds of circumstances,
and then we're just kind of pursuing the wrong things. So instead, I want to talk about what are the things in life that are actually going to help us be happy. Now, I really am talking about the pursuit of happiness, or like the momentum of happiness. I'm not saying like your base number of happiness. So say there might be a number of reasons that you might, genetics and a whole bunch of things, that you might be predisposed to like a lower number out of 10 of happiness. But I think that the next few things that I suggest to you will actually often, not always, will elevate your happiness, even if it's a little bit or perhaps a lot. So here are the things that I've been reading some peer-reviewed articles and also looking at my own life, preparing for this talk, and here are a few of the things that I think will actually help you be happy. So the first one is forgiveness, okay? We have forgiveness, and the opposite is bitterness. If you are walking around holding grudges, being bitter at people, it's going to make you less happy. If you're someone who's choosing forgiveness, then you're going to be more free and more happy. Now, it's really important in light of the talking yesterday about the sacredness and value of human life that you need to know what forgiveness is and isn't. Forgiveness is not pretending like nothing bad happened. Forgiveness is not giving someone access to you if they've already betrayed your trust. No, you can actually go and report to the police abuse that has occurred and still be forgiving that person. Okay, you can seek justice and still forgive. Forgiveness is letting go of your personal vendetta, your bitterness against them. Again, you can be still seeking justice where there isn't justice. But if you are living life in this way of seeking to forgive people, it is going to positively impact your happiness. So now how I pursue happiness is not, it's seeking to be forgiving. The next one, thankfulness. The opposite of thankfulness, I would say, is entitlement. So when I do a job for the Round Church and they pay me, like that's a transaction. I did a job, they pay me, it's in my contract. But when someone gives me a gift, and I'm like, oh, thank you, like there's a sense of gratitude. So when we get something we're entitled to, we're not necessarily like awe and wonder, but when we get something that is a gift, we're able to be really thankful and live life with astonishment, awe, and wonder. And this is something that you can have on your birthday when you receive gifts, and it's something you can have even in the worst of places. And so when I was thinking of an example of thankfulness, of someone who's not entitled, I thought of the pretty famous story of Corrie ten Boom and her sister. They were Dutch people who hid Jewish people, like my family, and so they hid people like us, and then they ended up being taken by the Nazis, thrown in a horrific concentration camp, and it was horrific. And there was a lot of unhappiness there for sure. But Betsy had this indelible, this resilient happiness. And when her sister, they were praying, and Betsy prayed, like, God, thank you for the fleas. And Corrie was like, yo, the fleas are horrible. How are you thanking God for them? And Betsy said, well, don't you see? The fleas are keeping the abusive, horrific guards away from us. And so even though they're like, I'm thankful that they're keeping, it's worse to have the Nazis like on top of us, and they're keeping them away. There's so many fleas in this concentration camp, they're leaving us alone. Now, you might see a lot of what we call reframing. One can give a whole talk about how reframing helps us to be happy, to have a negative situation, you're looking for a positive. That when one reframes in a healthy way, what they're really doing is they're finding what they can be thankful in a situation. And this can be done in a way that's denial of the real grief. I'm not advocating for that. But looking for thankfulness instead of being bitter is going to be able to, instead of being entitled, will help you live a happier life. The third one is friendship. Whether you're an introvert, of which there are many in Cambridge, you're very shy and introverted, but you have a few close friends and they mean the world to you, or you're Ella Perkin and you know virtually everyone in the room, whoever you are, if you have meaningful friendships, your life is going to be, there's going to be this resilient happiness to you, and investing in that is such a key indicator of the happiness of your life. Now to dive deeper into this, those are three important pillars of happiness, and to flesh some of this out, I'm going to read to you a fictional story that Jesus really did tell. So eyewitnesses recorded Jesus said these words, but he said them as a fictional story to tell us something very true of life. One would find this in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. I'll read it to you. And Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And the father divided his property between the 2 sons. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into the far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when the son had spent everything, then a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. I'll highlight a couple things here. Jesus is going to be highlighting two of the main ways, the main categories that we pursue happiness. This son is pursuing happiness in the physical pleasures of this world. So he's pursuing it by trying to get wealth from his dad. He's partying. Later on, we discover he was using prostitutes. So this is some very hedonistic, physical stuff that he's trying to pursue happiness in. And you can see that the things that I warned you about, that the bitterness instead of forgiveness, an attitude of entitlement, of breaking of friendship. You can see these in here, that even as he's pursuing what he thinks will make him happy, when he asks his dad for his inheritance while his dad is alive, that's showing this breaking and rejection of his relationship with his dad, because an inheritance is something you get after someone dies, and he's essentially saying, I could wish you dead, I want your stuff. And the dad nevertheless gives it to him. You can see the breaking of relationship, the breaking of friendship. Jesus is highlighting in the geographical distance. He goes to a far country. You can see these things in him, and you can see that he's so miserable. That it's described that he was beginning to dream of just being able to eat the pig's food. He's really down and out. The boy's not happy. Okay, so so it says that when he kind of came to his senses in the midst of his misery, he began to dream of being. We'll pick it up in verse 17. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread? But I perish here with hunger. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as your hired servant." So you can see that the son, he doesn't begin to think, how can I be restored to relationship, to sonship with my dad? How can I have friendship again with him? He is saying, you know what? It's still something very physical. He wants food, so he's going to have himself treated like a lowly employee to have that entitlement of food. That's what he's saying. And so he rises, it says he came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion. And his father ran to him and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes, and celebrate. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. So what we're anticipating, a very transactional restoration, not to friendship, but to the household as an employee, becomes this beautiful celebration. Jesus continues, even more surprisingly. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, the older son, heard music and dancing. And he called one of his servants and asked what these things meant. And the servant said, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed a fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound." But he was angry. The son was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, "Look, these many years I've served you, and I never disobeyed your commands, yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him." And the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found." Jesus brilliantly is highlighting two different pursuits of happiness. One is the younger brother with the physical, hedonistic way, and the other brother is the older brother is very moral. It seems like he's someone who has achieved a lot. That might be those who, you were a valedictorian in your school, you are the president of your JCR, you are just absolutely slaying the grades, and your parents bring into every conversation that you study at Cambridge, okay? You're just someone who's trying to be so high achieving at everything. And yet Jesus is showing that second way, that those of us who are kind of pursuing happiness that way, we start to think oh yeah, the second brother, that's, all the things that meant valedictorian. We really think those things will make us happy. And Jesus shows how he's actually really miserable. And subversively, the story ends with the brother who we would have less respect for, perhaps, seeming to be reconciled. He experiences forgiveness and thankfulness and friendship, the fattened calf. Love the fattened calf. But the other brother ends far away, which is not what we're expecting. You can see the same things. Clearly, the older brother is also entitled. Clearly, he's not giving forgiveness to the younger brother. Broken relationship. Not only is he Not only is he far from his dad, but he actually says, this son of yours, instead of saying my brother. There's brokenness in friendship. So you can see those things are missing, and he's unhappy. But there's a fourth pillar, and I think it's even more important, and that is forgiveness, being forgiven. You go to the fourth point now. Being forgiven is not this. So I'm saying that if you forgive others, it will help you be happy. But if you're someone who receives forgiveness, that's going to be crucial. And I really need you to pay attention to this. I think that a lot of us can understand that people have hurt us and that we should forgive people. Like it will help us be happy instead of being bitter. So right now, you can probably think of like a bunch of different people who've slighted you, offended you, disappointed you, didn't meet your expectations. Maybe you booked a speaker, you're not that impressed. Whatever it might be, and you're thinking, yeah, I can forgive them. I think it's a little harder for us sometimes, for some of us to realize that all the kind of things we've listed off about others that we need to forgive, we also have done those types of things to others, and we need forgiveness. But maybe it's not that hard to believe. Maybe, like me, there are things in your life where you actually have felt so haunted by mistakes you've made. Maybe you know what it's like I do, to have lived and carried shame in yourself. And if you're really honest, you actually do need forgiveness. Now, I said that in this talk, there's a bunch of stuff that you can apply, whether you believe there's a God or not, whether you believe in Jesus or not. Forgiving, thanking, befriending, these are things people can do, whether or not you believe in God. Now, people might apply the same logic to my fourth point, which is to receive forgiveness. But in fact, they might even say, you know what? You can forgive yourself. I hear people say that a lot. Just forgive yourself. But I need to just clarify something for you. And this is going to help you not only with happiness, this will help your finances too. I promise you that, okay? Forgiveness is originally a financial concept. And what it's applied to a situation where you owe someone money. You don't have money to pay your debt, okay? So say February 7th, our college tuition was due, okay? I'm an international student. I pay international fees. Trust me, it was literally February 7th, okay? So if, say, hypothetically, you don't have the money to pay your college tuition, okay? And you're like, in that case, you need forgiveness. Now imagine if my buddy, say Cam Fensky, great runner, what about his finances? Say he says to me, Daniel, forgive yourself. And I say to the college, hey, don't worry about it. I forgave myself. I can promise you it won't go over well. Now, you might be thinking, oh, no, just pull out that credit card. But that's actually a helpful analogy. If you try to forgive yourself by paying what you already don't have, not only do you get credit card extra fees, you also get more interest. You're actually digging yourself deeper into the need for forgiveness. I think a lot of us are trying to forgive ourselves. We have a sense of shame. We've wronged people. We have guilt in life. And we're just like, I forgive myself. And for some reason, it's like you're still living life trying to prove yourself and trying to hide away the guilt. It's because it doesn't work. If the only way that I'm going to be forgiven if I can't pay my tuition is if the college, if St. John says, Daniel, we're paying your tuition for you. Okay? Or if some rich living legend like my friend Ludwig is just like, yo, I got you, okay? I got you. And he pays my tuition. Someone's going to have to pay it who actually has it. And this is where we actually see in this story the Father's magnificent forgiveness. The Father is the one that initiates the restoration and all the beautiful things that happen in the story. You can see that in a sense, maybe the son, the younger son, switches from the first mode of pursuing happiness to the second mode. At first, it was just physical, and then he begins to think, I can achieve happiness by saying the right thing, by becoming eloquent. And so he starts rehearsing. You see in the passage, he's rehearsing these words about how he's going to kind of earn his father's employment. And you'll notice that his practicing is longer than his speech. It's because the father interrupts him. So he starts saying, oh, Father, please. And the father runs to the son. And the father doesn't even give a counter speech. The father just goes, quick, bring the robe, get the fattened calf, get the ring. And the father just absolutely embraces him and restores him not to the household as an employee, but to close sonship and celebrates him. And you see this beautiful reconciliation. And from this, I actually think receiving forgiveness, so I have it as point 4, really should be point 1. That we begin able to extending forgiveness to others. We begin to be able to be people who are thankful the more that we're able to let our shame be washed away, our guilt be washed away. When we are able to receive forgiveness, we're then able to extend it to others and live a life that is so much more filled with gratitude instead of entitlement and astonishment. It's a beautiful thing. But what about What about the fact that even as I talk about pursuing happiness, and I'm clearly indicating that that God is representing the Father in this story, that the whole message of Christianity is that though this is a fictional story, this is true of life. That all of us are like either one of those two brothers, that we find ourselves through our poor decisions in life far from God, that we're cut off from the divine, from all that is beautiful and good. And that just as the Father pursued, ran toward the Son, initiated that reconciliation, so Jesus, God, the Son of God, is God coming into our lives, stepping into history, stepping into reality. Like, this isn't just a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that is a fact. It's true. And that he is making it possible by paying our guilt, by paying our debt, by taking all of our shame on him when he died on a cross 2,000 years ago, and making it that he's paid our debts so that we can be free and restored to God and more fully enter into friendship with others, living a life of forgiveness and gratitude and vibrant friendship with God and with other people. It's a beautiful thing he's offering, these different ways, the fullness of pursuing happiness. And yet, this raises another question, which is that all of us in life, even if you are someone who is vibrantly receiving the Father's forgiveness, experiences unhappiness. And what do we do with that? Am I saying if you're a good Christian, or even if just open up your heart and receive God's forgiveness, that you're going to be happy? Well, we're still unhappy in varying degrees. A couple words on that before we close. One is that I think in many ways, I'm confident that the happiest person that ever is Jesus. He lives and extends forgiveness and gratitude like no one else. And yet the Bible in Isaiah 53 speaks so beautifully of him it describes him as a man of sorrows. I think another way of saying that is that he is haunted, that there's like pain in his eyes as he looks and sees and joins us in the brokenness of this world. There's so much brokenness. The fact that there's unhappiness in our lives and in this world is no surprise to the Bible or God, because the story of the Bible that culminates in the good news of Jesus' forgiveness, it actually, we've kind of skipped the intro of the story, which is that God made the world beautiful and in perfect harmony with each other, but that in our rebellion against him, whether through overt rejection of him or just not even believing he exists, that this world is broken. And thus we see the stuff I talked about yesterday of human trafficking, sexual abuse, and neglect, and betrayal, and all this that devalues and cheapens not only each other, but reality. And so there's such brokenness. So there's a psychologist named Wilhelm Steckel in 1923 said that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. The opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. And God is anything but indifferent to the reality of the brokenness and injustice and pain in our lives. It's such a comfort. And so if you are experiencing grief or unhappiness, you can know that one of the names for Jesus is Emmanuel, which means God with us, that God's with us in our pain. And one of the many gifts and beautiful things about the Bible is that in the middle of the Bible, if you just open it up to literally the middle, there is 150 poems and songs that God has given us in the Bible to express the full range of human experience and emotion. And one out of every three of those songs is a lament, is an expression of grief. The Bible gives words to our grief. And so there's 50 lament psalms. In 49 of them, you see the person pouring out their grief to God. And then there is this but, or nevertheless. It's just this one Hebrew word, vav, nevertheless, but. And then they begin to remember the goodness of God, and you see happiness restored. And it truly has been my experience that when I'm going through heartache, that by being able to put words to my grief and being able to be honest and not in denial, I'm able to pour that out and be honest with God and with my friends, and I'm able to eventually find happiness again. But my favorite of all those sad songs is Psalm 88. You can look it up, Psalm 88. It starts sad, is sad, ends sad, which is God giving us permission to not have to always put a positive spin, to reframe everything, but that we can be just so honest about our pain. And if we don't find the strength to be able to find the silver lining to just keep going through it. And so the fifth point, and you'll really see this about happy people, the fifth point is this. You can go to it now. No, that's the video. Okay, I'll just tell you. The fifth point is bring your grief to God. Bring your grief to God. I think that can definitely include sharing our grief and being honest with the pain of our lives with others. But there's no one who's able to so understand and relate to our grief as much as God, which is why he's the safest person for us to disclose to, along with others. So the 3 points that I have for you today. First, the problem of happiness. If you were to stop trying to find your happiness in these things, your life is already going to start to have more capacity for happiness. See, if we try to find, I showed you my son. I tried to weave into this a photo of my wife and my daughter because they are just such beautiful and lovely people. But if I try to find my happiness in them, there's a sense to which I begin to objectify them. None of us and no experience of life can handle the weight of our putting our hopes and our happiness in. And so those of us who try to find our happiness in friends begin to actually suffocate them or suffocate our family. But instead, as we're able to seek happiness in pursuing forgiveness and friendship and these things, as that's part of our pursuit, then we're able to actually enjoy those good things. But so we talked about the problem of happiness. Secondly was the pillars of happiness: forgiveness, being forgiven, having gratitude. And then finally, as we close, it's the promise of happiness. And that would be the third pillar. The third point is the promise of happiness. Now, I think the most remarkable thing in what Jesus says, and maybe the most surprising, is that when the father is pleading with the younger son, and he's saying, please come in, and the son is saying, you never gave me these things, I would have expected the father to say, actually, look at all the things I have given you. Like, you're wrong. But he actually doesn't correct him and say, actually, it's not fair. The father's response is, but you have me. See, what Jesus is telling us here is that he's showing us something that can change your life if you let it. Jesus is showing us in this passage that of all the gifts we receive from God, whether you're a Christian, whether you believe in God or not, your life is filled with these gifts from God, friends and family. And of all the gifts we can receive from God, the best gift he gives us is himself. That in this case, the way one of my friends said it is, the giver is the gift. The point of this whole story is not it's not happy. It's not the inheritance or the money or this that will make you happy, but it's being back with your family. The point is that the truest friendship you can ever have, the most beautiful love you can ever know, is to belong to God, is to be his child, is that he is your home. And so, me just saying that isn't enough to make it true. But if it's true, it's the most resilient happiness you can ever have. And isn't that worth investigating? I want to invite you, if you don't believe in God, to look and see whether or not he's true. Because originally when I was asked to speak on, is the pursuit of happiness making us sad? I thought I'd pull a C.S. Lewis and say, no, we're not pursuing happiness enough. He has this magnificent quote that for the sake of time we'll skip. Well, you know what, let's go to the quote. It's too good, okay? Go back. Okay. It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. C.S. Lewis is saying, and I agree with him, that we are settling for these things that won't give happiness when the thing that will really give us happiness, not the thing, but the person, is Jesus. And I agree with him. But what I see as I look even deeper into this story is that just as the Father was pursuing both sons, that God himself is pursuing us. And so I want to invite you to know that even if you start investigating God, it's actually not the effort of how much you work, but that even today you can pray and say, God, if you're pursuing me, if you're real, I want to know you. And if you already are a Christian, I want to encourage you to say, you know what, God, I confess, I pursue happiness and all these other things, but I want to be close to you. Be close to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Yeah, really insightful and practical. I hope that's sparked a few questions and things you're ready to discuss. We're running a bit late, so I'll give us like 5-ish minutes. If you just like turn to your tables, if you're not on a table with other people, please come in, join people. There'll also be a QR code up. So alongside discussions between each other, if you have any questions you'd like to put to Daniel or to Matt, then just scan the QR code and enter in the question, and they'll be popping up on the screen, and we'll get through as many as we can in about 5 minutes. Great, thank you. Sorry to cut discussions short. We're going to go straight into it. Please keep submitting questions to the Pigeonhole. They'll keep popping up there and voting up people, but we're going to jump straight into it. We have Matt here, who's our evening speaker, if you guys haven't been to any of our evening events, and they're both going to do their best to answer some of your hard questions. So we'll kick it off with the one at the very top, which is perpetual thankfulness naive? Go for it.
I'll use this mic. Okay, I'd mentioned that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. And so in this world, there is so much sad things that if you were always happy, I would think that you must be indifferent to the brokenness of other people. And so in that sense, like I mentioned that Jesus is both like so happy, and yet at the same time that there's so much grief he carries because he cares so much about the brokenness in this world. And so I would think that if you were perpetually happy, I would think that we should talk about that, because I don't think it would be healthy or real.
Thank you. That's great. Can we get the question list up again? Yeah, let's go for the next one. how do we know that God cares and is pursuing us? That can be difficult to feel in our day-to-day lives. How can we know that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it comes back to what Daniel was saying at the end there, that the way that Christians actually know that they are being pursued is because of the person of Jesus enters history 2,000 years ago, verified by witnesses upon witnesses, and does the most remarkable thing in the world, which is to die and give up his happiness with the claim that if he gives up his happiness, it's so that we can find the deepest possible joy and satisfaction. And that's not a kind of nebulous wishful thinking. I think the foundations of Christianity are based in an event that happened 2,000 years ago, and that's how we can root the faith that we have today.
Thank you. Let's have a look. I think the one with 5 votes is really interesting. Why do I need God if I feel like I can find joy on my own? Is there something different about God-given joy versus happiness? You kind of touched on the kind of joy, happiness stuff. Maybe you can dive in a bit more into that.
Is this one working now? Yeah. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Yeah, please feel free to jump in on this too. So the different types of debts require different amounts of pay. So like, I was joking about my friend Ludwig, who's one of my best friends here in Cambridge, but there's just no way that either Ludwig or I can pay each other's college fees. We're both international students. It's really high, okay? So like, I can probably like spot Ludwig if we're like dropping by the sweets store that's on the corner by St. John's, but like, I'm not gonna be able to pay his tuition. My St. John's College, I'm convinced, has enough money to pay for all of our tuition. So St. John's is able to pay for my tuition. But if I had an even bigger debt that was bigger than St. John's or Trinity, that neither of those colleges could pay, then I would need a bigger, one might even say a cosmic source to pay my debt. And you'll notice that in the story I read to you, the son actually says, against you, Father, and heaven have I sinned. And that really is the case, that if there is a God, and we have sinned against him, like the only one who's able to truly wash away our shame, remove our guilt, and restore us to friendship with him is that very cosmic, divine God himself. And so whether you, have you ever experienced in life where you've offended, hurt someone, and you had no idea? I have. It hurts so much when they find like, hey, you did this wrong to me, and you're just like, snap, you're right. I can't believe that. So in life, there are times where we are carrying a guilt that we're not even aware of. And one of the best things that can happen to restore that friendship is for us to find out. And so there's bad news and good news about God, about Jesus. And that is the bad news is that we actually have wronged and sinned against him. But the good news is he's already dealt with it, that Jesus died for us even when we didn't believe in him.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. As I was listening to you and reflecting on that question, I think we inherently know deep down that true joy that deeply satisfies can't be found in our achievements, can only be found in our relationships. What type of relationship? A relationship where someone really knows what we're like, really sees us for who we are, where we don't have to pretend, and yet they love us anyway. But that relationship is almost impossible to find outside of Jesus. Because almost every other relationship that we have, if we were to show ourselves in full and all the ugliness and all the shame, people just want to back away. And we kind of know that. And I think there's a limit to our joy because we have to keep people at arm's length. But if it's true that you can be in a relationship with Jesus, if it's true that he already sees everything about us, and if it's true that he pursues us anyway, then I think that's where true joy can be found, regardless of what we achieve and don't achieve in life.
Thank you both. I'm afraid I think we'll have to leave it there. But I think that's a good point to end on. If you have more questions right now and have time to stick around, both of these guys will be around. There's also loads of other people around with red jumpers. Please stay and chat. It'd be really good to get some conversations going. Also, if you want to respond a bit, don't have time right now, but still want to respond, we have something called Continuing Conversations. There's a little leaflet for it. Should be on all your tables. It's for the next 3 weeks after this on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays in this church. It's at lunchtime. We're going to be going through some of the questions that we didn't manage to answer today. And just having open conversations about this sort of thing. So please come along to that.
And tomorrow, what's the lunchtime talk tomorrow?
The lunchtime talk tomorrow, if you're interested in some of the other things going on, grab one of these on your way out as well. The lunchtime talk tomorrow is Has Science Cancelled God? So if that's a question you've been answering, maybe having with your friends, please come along to that. That'll be
And that's with Sharon
really
Dirks?
Yeah, definitely.
Yo, Sharon Dirks is amazing. So go tomorrow, 1 o'clock, free lunch. Sharon Dirks Has Science Cancelled God? And then tonight you can hear Matt Waldock speaking about death. Yeah. So we thought happiness, death, like they fairly know, but these questions about like what about the brokenness of the world and death and all this stuff, like, yeah, if you value things that are valuable, or rather, if you just go, okay? Be there tonight. Matt Waldock, 7:30.
Yeah,
right here.
Be there or be square. Right
Yeah.
here, 7:30.
Yeah.
One final promo will be: we have a little free bookstore on your way out that Adam is gesturing now. Please come, have a look at the books. Take any if you're interested. Yeah, there's some really good ones to kind of deal with some of the questions about joy, the Bible, science, all of that. There's books there that can help you grapple with that if you're interested. Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's been a great event.